The late-night visitor Emma Hayes stood in her modest kitchen, stirring honey into chamomile tea, when 3 sharp knocks shattered the peaceful silence of her Tuesday evening. It was past 9, an hour when visitors simply did not arrive unannounced. Through the peephole, she saw a figure that made her breath catch. Vincent Blackwell, her boss, the untouchable CEO of Blackwell Industries, standing in her dimly lit hallway. She opened the door to find him transformed from the immaculate executive she knew. His charcoal suit jacket was missing, his white shirt wrinkled, the sleeves rolled to his elbows. His usually perfect dark hair fell across his forehead in disarray, and his steel-grey eyes held a wild desperation she had never witnessed in 3 years of working for him. "Emma," he said, his voice rough and urgent, "I need your help with something that goes far beyond your job description." The impossible request. She stepped aside, allowing him into her small living space. He looked out of place among her simple furniture and cheerful throw pillows, like a thoroughbred horse in a stable meant for ponies. He paced the length of her worn carpet, his expensive leather shoes silent on the soft fibers. "Mr. Tanaka arrives tomorrow from Osaka," Vincent began without preamble. "The pharmaceutical partnership, been negotiating for 18 months, hinges entirely on his investment. $200 million, Emma. It would revolutionize our research division." Emma nodded slowly, her professional instincts engaging despite the strangeness of the situation. She knew the Tanaka deal was massive. She had coordinated countless conference calls and prepared dozens of presentations for it. "That's wonderful news," she said carefully. "No," the word came out harsh, bitter. "It's a catastrophe. Tanaka's assistant mentioned something yesterday that I missed entirely. He's deeply traditional. He believes unmarried men at my age lack the stability and judgment necessary for major business partnerships. He expects to meet my wife tomorrow night at the annual Investor Gala." The implication hit Emma like cold water. Vincent Blackwell was 32, devastatingly handsome, and perpetually single. His dedication to the company, no room for romantic entanglements. The price of pretending. Emma's mind immediately went to solutions. "I can contact several professional agencies. They provide." "I don't want a stranger," Vincent interrupted, turning to face her fully. For the first time, she saw genuine vulnerability in his expression. "Someone I don't know could make mistakes, say something that contradicts my background. I need someone who knows my schedule, my preferences, my life." He took a step closer. "You organize every detail of my existence, Emma. You know what I drink, what I read, which clients I can't stand. You know me." He paused, his gaze intense. "I need you to pretend to be my wife. Just for one evening." The room spun. Emma gripped the back of her chair, her knuckles white. Wife. The word felt foreign, impossible. She was the invisible assistant who kept his calendar running smoothly, who remembered his dry cleaner and his mother's birthday. She was not the kind of woman who appeared on his arm at glittering social events. "Mr. Blackwell, I don't think I know about your brother," he said quietly. Emma's heart stopped. Her younger brother, James, had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease 6 months ago. The experimental treatment his doctors recommended cost more than she made in 2 years. Vincent's expression softened. "I know you've been working double shifts, taking freelance projects. I've seen the exhaustion in your eyes." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Let me help. I'll cover all of James's medical expenses, the treatment, the hospital stays, everything. I'll ensure he has the best specialists, the best care available. All of it, Emma, in exchange for one night." The weight of yes. Emma's throat tightened. She thought of James, of his bright smile dimming under the weight of his illness. She thought of their parents, who had already remortgaged their house. She thought of the stack of medical bills on her own kitchen table, each one a small nightmare. "Just one night," she whispered. "One evening," Vincent confirmed. "We attend the gala together. Convince Tanaka that I'm a stable, committed man, and by midnight, it's over. You'll have fulfilled your part, and I'll have the investment." The logical part of her brain screamed warnings. This was manipulation, coercion dressed in expensive packaging. But the desperate part, the part that loved her brother more than her pride, saw only one path forward. "What would I have to do?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Relief flooded Vincent's features. "Be by my side. Play the role of devoted wife. Smile, laugh at my stories. Act as though we're genuinely in love." He paused. "I'll provide everything you need: wardrobe, jewelry, background story. All you have to do is follow my lead." Emma looked at him. This powerful man who commanded boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, now standing vulnerable in her living room, asking for something money alone could not buy. She thought of James, of hope, of the chance to give her family one less burden. "All right," she said finally. "I'll do it." Vincent exhaled, his shoulders dropping as tension drained from his body. "Thank you, Emma. I won't forget this." As he turned to leave, Emma called out, "Mr. Blackwell." He paused at the door. "We should probably start calling each other by our first names, if we're supposed to be married." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Vincent," he said. "Call me Vincent." After he left, Emma sank onto her couch, staring at the closed door. She had just agreed to pretend to be Vincent Blackwell's wife. For one night, she would step into a world of luxury and lies, playing a role that felt both thrilling and terrifying. She had no idea that this single decision would change everything, not just for her brother's future, but for her own carefully guarded heart, building a foundation. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Vincent's executive office as Emma stood before his desk, feeling like a student called to the principal's office. Vincent had summoned her at precisely 8 o'clock, and now he sat reviewing a thick folder with the intensity he usually reserved for merger documents. "I've prepared a complete dossier," he announced, sliding the folder across the polished mahogany surface. "Our story needs to be airtight. Mr. Tanaka is perceptive, and any inconsistency could raise suspicions." Emma opened the folder to find neatly typed pages, bullet points organized with ruthless efficiency. Vincent began reciting facts as though briefing his board of directors. "We met 3 years ago at a medical research charity auction. You were volunteering. I was immediately struck by your intelligence and compassion." He glanced at her briefly before continuing. "We married quietly last year, keeping it private to avoid media scrutiny. Our honeymoon was in the Swiss Alps. I chose Switzerland because I actually visited Geneva last winter for a conference, so I can speak authentically about the location." He detailed their supposed first date at an Italian restaurant, their shared love of classical music, even the fictional story of his proposal at a botanical garden. Every element was calculated, precise, sterile. Emma listened quietly, her hands folded in her lap. When he finished, a heavy silence filled the room. He looked at her expectantly, waiting for her to start memorizing her lines. Instead, she shook her head gently. "This won't work." Vincent's brow furrowed. "Everything is consistent. The timeline is plausible. The details are specific enough to be believable. The art of authenticity. It's not about the facts." "Vincent," Emma said softly, finding courage she didn't know she possessed. She stood and walked toward the window, gathering her thoughts. "Mr. Tanaka and his wife aren't auditors checking financial records. They're people who've been married for 30 years. They won't be listening for consistency in our timeline. They'll be watching how we move together, how we look at each other." She turned to face him, her gaze steady. "They'll notice if I don't know how you take your coffee when you're stressed versus when you're relaxed. They'll see if you don't instinctively reach for my hand when we walk. No amount of memorized facts can create the intimacy of a real relationship." Vincent stared at her, his usual composure faltering. He had built his entire career on logic, on careful planning, and she had just dismantled his perfect strategy with a few simple truths. Emma took a breath, feeling a shift in the dynamic between them. "We don't need a script, Vincent. We need experiences. We need to actually spend time together, not as boss and assistant, but as to people getting to know each other." She straightened her shoulders, meeting his surprised gaze with quiet determination. "Take me to dinner tonight, not to review our story, not to rehearse our lines. Take me to dinner as if you're my husband and I'm your wife, For the first time in 3 years, Emma saw Vincent Blackwell completely speechless. The first real detail restaurant Vincent chose was intimate and elegant, tucked away on a quiet street far from the business district where they might encounter colleagues. Soft candlelight illuminated tables draped in white linen, and the pianist played gentle jazz in the corner. Emma arrived wearing a simple emerald dress, her usually practical ponytail replaced by soft waves that framed her face. When Vincent saw her in the restaurant's entrance, something flickered in his expression: surprise, then appreciation, then something deeper he quickly masked. "You look beautiful," he said, the words coming out more genuine than practiced. At first, they fell into familiar patterns. Vincent mentioned a conference call she needed to schedule. Emma reminded him about a contract renewal, but when she gently placed her hand on his arm, stopping him mid-sentence, the corporate armor began to crack. "Tell me something nobody at the office knows about you," she said softly. Vincent swirled the wine in his glass, hesitating. Emma waited patiently, not pushing, simply creating space for him to fill if he chose. "Unveiling hidden dreams. Before I inherited the company," he finally began, his voice quieter than she'd ever heard it. "I wanted to be a marine biologist. I was fascinated by deep-sea ecosystems, by the creatures that survived in complete darkness under crushing pressure." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "My father thought it was foolish. When he died suddenly, there was no choice. The company needed me, and my dreams became irrelevant." The confession hung between them, intimate and surprising. Emma saw past the CEO facade to the young man who had sacrificed his passion for duty, and her heart ached for him. "What about you?" Vincent asked, turning the focus to her. "What's your dream, Emma?" She felt heat rise in her cheeks. "It's not very ambitious compared to running a corporation." "Tell me anyway," he insisted, his gaze gentle but intent. "I want to open a bookstore cafe," she admitted. "Somewhere cozy with mismatched furniture and shelves packed with used books. A place where people can spend hours reading without anyone rushing them, where the coffee is always hot and there's always fresh pastries. My brother and I used to dream about it when we were kids." Vincent listened, truly listened, watching the way her eyes lit up as she described her vision. He realized with startling clarity that in 3 years of working together, he had never really seen Emma Hayes not as a person with dreams and desires, just as an extension of his own productivity. The dance lesson nights later, Vincent cleared the main conference room. Everyone had gone home. Emma arrived to find him waiting in the vast empty space, his jacket removed, his sleeves rolled up. Soft waltz music played from speakers he'd set up. Tanaka's wife mentioned they loved to dance, Vincent explained. "We need to look natural together." He extended his hand formally. Emma took it, and he pulled her into a traditional waltz position, but his movements were rigid, mechanical. He counted steps aloud. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, as if programming a computer. Emma stumbled trying to follow his rigid lead, stepping on his foot twice. Frustration built until she pulled away. "You're treating this like a business transaction," she said. "Dancing isn't about perfect execution, it's about connection." Before he could respond, she stepped back into his space, taking control. She placed his hand firmly on her waist, feeling the warmth of his palm through her blouse. She took his other hand and intertwined their fingers. "Stop thinking," she commanded softly. "Just feel the music. Trust me." Vincent hesitated, every instinct telling him to maintain control. But something in Emma's steady gaze made him surrender. He relaxed his shoulders, stopped counting, and simply moved. When the world disappeared suddenly, they were dancing, really dancing. Emma guided them through the steps, and Vincent followed, their bodies finding a natural rhythm. He spun her out, then drew her back, and when she came to rest against his chest, something electric passed between them. The conference room, the city lights beyond the windows, the very air around them seemed to shimmer and fade. There was only the music, the movement, and the dangerous awareness of how perfectly they fit together. When the song ended, they stood frozen, still holding each other. Vincent's hand remained on her waist, Emma's on his shoulder. Their faces were inches apart, both breathing harder than the gentle dance warranted. Vincent's gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. The moment stretched, heavy with possibility and danger. It would be so easy to close that distance, to discover if her lips were as soft as they looked. Emma saw the want in his eyes, felt it mirror her own treacherous feelings. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Then Vincent stepped back, releasing her abruptly, shattering the spell. "That was good," he said, his voice rough. "We should be convincing tomorrow night." Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. But as she gathered her things to leave, she knew they had crossed an invisible line. This was no longer just pretending. Somewhere between the dinner conversations and the waltz in an empty boardroom, something real had taken root, and it terrified them both. The transformation Satyr evening arrived with the weight of an approaching storm. Emma stood in her bedroom, staring at the reflection of a woman she barely recognized. The dress Vincent had sent was a masterpiece, deep burgundy silk that hugged her curves before flowing to the floor in elegant waves. A delicate diamond necklace rested against her collarbone, borrowed from Vincent's family collection. He'd explained in the note. Her hair was styled in an intricate updo, and professional makeup highlighted features she usually kept understated. She looked like she belonged in Vincent's world. But inside, her heart raced with doubt. The knock on her door came at exactly 7. When she opened it, Vincent stood in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, and the look on his face made every nervous moment worth it. His eyes widened, his lips parting in genuine surprise. For several heartbeats, he simply stared. "Emma," he breathed, his voice carrying an awe she'd never heard before. "You're absolutely stunning." The drive to the Four Seasons Hotel was filled with a charged silence. In the back of the town car, Vincent reached over and took her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Nervous?" he asked softly. "Terrified," she admitted. "Don't be." His thumb traced circles on her palm, a gesture that felt far too intimate for their arrangement. "Just be yourself. That's more than enough." Meeting the Tanakasti Hotel ballroom was a spectacle of crystal chandeliers, gold accents, and elegantly dressed guests. Emma felt Vincent's hand move to the small of her back as they entered, a possessive yet protective gesture that sent warmth through her entire body. Mr. Tanaka was a distinguished man in his early 60s with kind eyes and an air of quiet authority. His wife, Yuki, was petite and graceful, with a gentle smile that immediately put Emma at ease. "Vincent, my friend," Mr. Tanaka greeted warmly, then turned his attention to Emma. "And this must be the woman who captured your heart, Mrs. Blackwell. It's a true pleasure." The title sent a strange thrill through Emma. Mrs. Blackwell, for tonight. It was real. Vincent's performance was flawless. He introduced her with genuine pride in his voice, his hand never leaving her. When they sat for dinner, he pulled out her chair, poured her water before his own, and included her naturally in every conversation. But it was the small, unrehearsed moments that sold the illusion. When Vincent told a story about a difficult negotiation, Emma laughed and placed her hand on his arm, adding, "You forgot to mention you were running on 3 hours of sleep and terrible coffee." The intimate detail, the easy familiarity, made the Tanakas smile knowingly. When Emma mentioned her brother's recovery, Vincent's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently in support. The gesture was automatic, protective, and entirely genuine, the question that changed everything midway through the evening. While the men discussed business briefly, Mrs. Tanaka leaned toward Emma with a warm, conspiratorial smile. "Forgive me for being forward, dear, but I must ask. My husband judges business partnerships, but I judge hearts. What was the moment you knew you loved Vincent?" The question struck Emma like lightning. The scripted answers she and Vincent had prepared dissolved. She looked across the table at Vincent, who was listening intently to her husband, but whose attention seemed perpetually tethered to her, as if he always knew exactly where she was in any room. She thought of him standing in her apartment, vulnerable and desperate. She remembered him at her grandmother's farm, hammering fence posts with inexperienced but determined hands. She saw him in that empty conference room, finally letting go of control and trusting her to lead. "It was when he let me see him," Emma said softly, her voice thick with unexpected emotion. "Not the brilliant CEO everyone admires, but the man underneath, the one who doubts himself, who carries the weight of expectations, who dreams of oceans he'll never explore." Her eyes found his across the table. "The moment I realized he trusted me enough to be vulnerable, that's when I knew." The raw honesty in her answer seemed to suspend time. Vincent's conversation halted mid-sentence. His gaze locked onto hers with an intensity that stole her breath. She saw shock in his eyes, then something deeper, recognition, perhaps, or realization. Mrs. Tanaka beamed, satisfied. "That is love," she declared. The terrace kiss letter. As the evening progressed, Vincent guided Emma toward the hotel's private terrace under the pretense of getting fresh air. The city sprawled below them, a tapestry of lights against the darkness. Tanaka's watching from the window. Vincent murmured, his arm sliding around her waist. "We should make this convincing." But when Emma looked up at him, searching his face in the dim light, she saw something that had nothing to do with performance. His free hand rose to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing her skin with aching gentleness. "For the deal," he whispered, though his voice carried no conviction. Then he kissed her. It began softly, tentatively, as though he were asking permission. But the moment their lips met, something ignited. The kiss deepened, becoming urgent, desperate, real. Vincent's hand tangled in her carefully styled hair, pulling her closer. Emma's arms wrapped around his neck, her body molding against his, as if she'd been designed to fit there. This wasn't acting. This wasn't for anyone watching. This was 3 weeks of tension, of growing feelings they'd both tried desperately to ignore, finally erupting into undeniable truth. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, their foreheads rested together. The city lights blurred around them. "Emma," Vincent whispered, his voice raw with emotion he couldn't name, or perhaps was afraid to name. She pulled back slightly, her eyes shimmering. "Vincent, we should go back inside," he said abruptly, stepping away, the walls slamming back into place. The dinner isn't over. But they both knew, whatever fragile pretense they'd maintained had just shattered beyond repair. The morning after Sunday morning brought cold reality. Emma sat in her apartment, the burgundy dress hanging in her closet, like evidence of a beautiful crime. Her phone buzzed with a single text from Vincent. "Thank you for last night. You were perfect. See you Monday." Perfect. The word felt like a dismissal, as though she'd simply performed a job well. The kiss that had consumed her thoughts all night was reduced to part of a successful business transaction. When Monday arrived, Emma dressed with mechanical precision and entered the office with her professional mask firmly in place. She would not be the lovesick assistant pining for her untouchable boss. She had known the rules from the beginning. Vincent's office door was closed all morning. When he finally called her in around noon, she found him standing by the window, his posture rigid. "The Tanaka deal closed this morning," he announced without turning around. $200 million. "The partnership is secured. Congratulations," Emma said, her voice carefully neutral. "Your performance was flawless." He finally turned to face her. "I've arranged for a substantial bonus to be deposited into your account, in addition to covering James's medical expenses as promised." His tone was businesslike, professional, as though they were discussing quarterly reports, rather than the night that had turned her world upside down. Emma felt something inside her crack. "Is that what Saturday night was to you?" she asked quietly. "A performance? A transaction?" Vincent's jaw tightened. "It was what we agreed upon. One night, Emma. That was the arrangement. The breaking point." "You're right," Emma said, her voice beginning to shake despite her efforts to control it. She reached into her bag and pulled out a crisp white envelope, placing it on his desk with trembling hands. "Which is why this is my formal resignation. Effective immediately." Vincent stared at the envelope as though it might explode. "What? Why would you?" "Because I can't do this anymore." The words burst from her, louder than she intended. Tears she'd been holding back began streaming down her face. I can't sit outside your office every day pretending that kiss meant nothing. I can't pretend my heart isn't breaking every time you walk past me, as though Saturday night was just another business meeting. She took a shuddering breath, her voice dropping to a painful whisper. I fell in love with you, Vincent. Somewhere between the dancing lessons and meeting your vulnerable side, I fell completely, hopelessly in love with you. And I know that wasn't part of our deal, but I can't turn it off. I can't pretend anymore. Vincent stood frozen, his face pale with shock. He opened his mouth, but no words emerged. I need to leave, Emma continued, wiping her tears with shaking hands. I need to go somewhere I can breathe again, somewhere I can start healing from this. She looked at him one last time, her heart in her eyes. I hope you get everything you ever wanted, Vincent. You deserve success. You deserve happiness. I'm just sorry I can't be the one to share it with you. She turned and walked toward the door. Emma, waity. Vincent finally found his voice, moving around his desk, but she was already gone. The door clicking shut behind her with a soft, final sound that echoed like thunder in the sudden silence. The week of realization days that followed were the darkest of Vincent's life. His new assistant, Margaret, was supremely qualified, Harvard-educated, efficient, and completely inadequate. She didn't know that he liked his coffee black before morning meetings, but with cream in the afternoon. She didn't screen calls from his overbearing aunt. She didn't have the subtle way of calming him with just a look when his temper flared in negotiations. She wasn't Emma. Vincent found himself making mistakes he hadn't made in years. He called his CFO by the wrong name in a meeting. He double-booked appointments. He snapped at his senior team over trivial matters. The carefully oiled machine of his professional life was grinding to a halt. But worse than the professional chaos was the emotional devastation. His penthouse, once a sanctuary of minimalist calm, felt like a mausoleum. Every surface reminded him of Emma, the book she'd left on his coffee table, the coffee mug she'd used when working late, the spot on his couch where she'd sat reviewing presentations. He'd convinced himself that what he felt was gratitude, professional respect, maybe attraction. But her absence revealed the devastating truth. He was in love with her, desperately, completely, irrevocably in love. The storm Friday afternoon brought a violent thunderstorm. Vincent sat in his office staring at his computer screen, where an email from Mr. Tanaka congratulated him again on the successful partnership, the deal he'd wanted for 18 months, the achievement that should have been the pinnacle of his career, felt utterly hollow. What was the point of success without someone to share it with? What was the point of building an empire if he came home to emptiness every night? He thought of Emma's dream, a cozy bookstore cafe with mismatched furniture, unwarm pastries. He thought of her smile when she talked about it, the light in her eyes. He'd been so focused on billion-dollar deals that he'd completely missed what actually mattered. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He'd sacrificed the best thing in his life for a business transaction. He'd broken her heart to close a deal. He'd let her walk away because he was too afraid to admit he needed her, not as an assistant, not as a fake wife, but as his partner in everything. Suddenly, sitting in his office felt impossible. Every second he wasted was another second Emma spent thinking he didn't care, thinking that kiss had meant nothing, thinking she wasn't the single most important person in his world. Vincent grabbed his keys and ran racing through the Ryanese luxury sedan, tore through the storm, windshield wipers baffling the deluge. He drove 4 hours, the city giving way to countryside, manicured highways yielding to winding country roads. He didn't care about the speed limits or the flooding or the danger. He had only one thought, one destination, Emma. When he finally reached her grandmother's small white house, night had fallen. He stumbled out of the car, his expensive suit immediately soaked, and made his way up the muddy path. His hands shook as he knocked. The door opened, and there she stood, Emma, in comfortable clothes, her hair down, her face free of makeup. She looked soft and real, and more beautiful than he'd ever seen her. Vincent. Her eyes widened in shock. What are you doing here? You're completely drenched. He couldn't speak. The carefully prepared speech he'd rehearsed in the car evaporated. All that remained was raw, desperate truth. The confession in the rain. I closed the Tanaka deal. he finally choked out, rain streaming down his face, mixing with tears he didn't bother hiding. I got everything I thought I wanted, and I stood in my office feeling absolutely nothing because you weren't there. He took a staggering step forward. I was a fool, Emma, a complete fool. I convinced myself I needed you for one night, for one business dinner. But the truth is I need you for every night, for the rest of my life. His voice broke. I don't need a fake wife. I don't need an assistant. I need you, your laughter, your warmth, the way you see through my defenses, the way you make me want to be better. He held her gaze, his eyes burning with intensity. I need my best friend, my partner, the woman I'm completely in love with. Part 2 is coming soon.